Hello, I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and welcome to In Conversation With, the podcast series that delves into the world of financial services and brings you face to face with some of the most notable figures in the industry. Listen as we discuss topics that are currently facing the industry and hear from visionary CEOs to disruptive innovators as we bring you a diverse array of voices and perspectives. We'll explore the challenges they faced, the lessons they've learned, and the insights they have to share about the ever-evolving landscape of financial services.
Hello, I'm Lois Vallely, Chief Reporter for Money Marketing, and for this episode of our podcast, I am joined by Chris Budd, who is a financial planner, wellbeing guru, author, podcaster, founder of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, and of course, guitarist for the band Consumer Duty. Chris, is there anything you haven't done?
I haven't yet. I've played at the Birmingham NEC. That's got to be a hope for an ambition for every musician to play the Birmingham NEC. Okay, so it wasn't the main, but we like to say Wembley. If somebody could book Consumer Duty for something, it could be in a sort of a pub in Wembley somewhere. That would be fine. But I can still say I played Wembley, couldn't I?
Yeah, you could. True. I also played the NEC, of course.
You did. Something we will never forget between us, will we?
No, definitely not. So definitely go and check that out, everyone. Anyway. Thank you so much for joining me today. Really good to see you. So first off, I know lots of people will know who you are, but for the benefit of those who might not, maybe you could start off by telling us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, that's a down by fate praise where you got to today. So I was a financial advisor all my life in financial planning, set up Ovation Finance back in 1998. Well, actually 2000, but 2 years self-employed. And then I sold it to an employee ownership trust in 2018. In 2015, I was told to take the summer off by one of my colleagues. Said, "You're being a bit argumentative. Take the summer off. You need a break." So I did. And in that summer, I started researching happiness and wrote the original Financial Wellbeing book. One of the jokes that I've told many, many times is that I actually invented the phrase financial wellbeing, but I didn't know that two other people had invented it before me. Which is actually true, because when I Googled the term, there was 2 entries on that Google search. I did it the other day, and there's now something like 310 million entries on a Google search for financial wellbeing. So I not very humbly like to claim that I was the guy that brought the idea of financial wellbeing into financial services industry, if nothing else. Is that enough?
Good. I think so, yes. That's very good. Well done. So wellbeing in general is a concept that I think has gained traction of late. Maybe because of the COVID pandemic, people seem to be much more aware of mental health and the extent to which it can affect people. But so too has financial well-being, as you've just mentioned, largely spurred on by you. But why else do you think that is? Why is this such a sort of a big topic now?
Well, there's a market shift going on. Financial planning is only, 20, 30 years old? If you compare it to other professions like accountancy and legal and the oldest profession, who go back millennia, then we are a very, very new profession. So we're developing. That's okay. We're still working out exactly what it is financial planning should be. Before the privatization of pensions and Maxwell fell off his boat and we lost all our company pension schemes, we didn't really have financial worries about the future. So, we're still developing it. And there's lots of great ideas. The stuff that Shaping Wealth are doing around behavioral finance, there's loads of new stuff coming in. So the way I like to think of it or frame it, and actually I have to give credit to this framing to Ruth Sturkey, the current IFW chair, Institute for Financial Wellbeing chair, is if financial advice was helping people set up products and manage their investments, we think of that as version 1. If you then add on cash flow forecasting, you get financial planning, which is version 2. Financial wellbeing is version 3, which is adding on to that. It's like an upgrade. It's not better, not replacing anything. It's upgrade. So you're adding on the product and investment, add the cash flow, and then you add the theories of happiness and wellbeing, and probably a bit of coaching skills, listening and questioning skills as well. And then you get a financial wellbeing oriented financial planning. So I think of it as version 3, the latest iteration. Why is it now? Because if you don't, frankly, you're going to get left behind. I think somebody that is only advising their clients on their money and isn't even doing cash flow yet, your clients will be leaving you. Certainly their kids will not continue with you because there's a better service elsewhere. If yet, therefore, you've got somebody who's doing the financial well-being oriented in a decade, 15 years time, it might take that long to get to work through, but you will be left behind because this is a direction to travel. And I think everybody's realizing, lots and lots of advisors are realizing that. One extra reason, which is those who do this stuff realize it's so much more fun for them, selfishly.
Definitely is. Yeah, I find the whole sort of behavioral, psychological well-being side of it really interesting personally. So what would you say, because obviously, so I write articles about financial well-being on money marketing sometimes. One of the comments which sort of recurs from one or two maybe slightly older guard advisors is, well, why should we be doing this? We're there to make money for our clients. So what would you say to them?
The research shows us that somebody who sees money as an objective will be less happy than they would otherwise be. So if you are helping a client to be wealthier, you may be helping them to be unhappier. I'll just give us an example. Let's take the classic trope of wealthy yacht, right? Let's say an advisor has a cash flow, a planner has a cash flow forecast, which is going to help their client to buy a yacht. Question needs to be asked, what is that yacht for? So if that yacht is so that somebody can go down to the local yacht club where lots of wealthy people are so they can show off how much money they've got, and then maybe you have to get a slightly bigger one because somebody else has got a bigger one, and that's the external reasons to impress people, that will make them unhappy. The reason for that is because if your well-being comes from external sources, you're always chasing the approval of somebody else. If your happiness lives the other side of somebody else's approval, then you always have to seek somebody else's approval or a target or financial goals, whatever it might be. I'd love to talk about financial goals, by the way. Whereas if that yacht is because you used to sail as a kid, it's your passion, you love the technical challenge, it's where your social life happens, and your kids quite often come back from university and like to go out sailing with you, that's much more internal and intrinsic. So the same goal could make you happy or unhappy. And we need to know the difference. So the answer to Harry is to say, you need to be doing it, because if you're making your clients unhappy, they will leave you for another advisor who tells you that's making you unhappy. And what's the point of doing the job if you're not making people happier? If your job is actually helping people to be wealthier, but that is making them unhappy, where's the satisfaction in that? So there's a whole host of reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to mention I attended the Institute for Financial Wellbeing's conference at the end of May, and it was a really, really great event. It was one that I don't usually connect with an event on such a level. I really, really enjoyed it. One of the things, like all of the speeches and all the concepts were really great, but one of the things I found especially interesting was that point about the disconnect we have from our future selves. It's something I'd never really thought of before, but definitely sort of, well, it has a lot of significance in my life. Definitely, I'm very short-termist. And I think it really proved the point about how much money is linked to psychology and mindset. And I wondered if you could sort of expand a bit on what you said at the conference.
Yeah, sure. So there's a great book literally out last week, actually, by the originator of a lot of this research, a guy called Hal Hershfield, American chap. And one thing that he explained actually on the Financial Wellbeing podcast, because he's been interviewed on there, that was a light bulb moment for me. And I have to also, by the way, just reference Dr. Tom Mathar at Aegon, who's been talking about this for a little while. And the penny didn't drop until I heard one particular bit of science, which is the neuroscientists wired up people's brains and said, just think about yourself sitting on a beach. And a particular bit of the brain lit up as they thought of themselves. And then they said, right, now think of somebody else sitting on the beach. And a different part of the brain lit up. So we use different parts of our brain when we think about ourselves or when we think about strangers. Then they said, now picture yourself in 10 years' time sitting on the beach. And the bit of the brain that lit up is the same bit that we use to think about strangers, which is just made sense suddenly. So if you say to somebody, put some money in a pension for your retirement, what you're saying is give money away to somebody else, which is why people don't tend to do it. Mm-hmm. We have an innate natural inclination to enjoy the now and not want to sacrifice enjoyment now for enjoyment later. And that's what the brain just doesn't work that way. So what we need to do, or planners need to do, is help their clients to connect better with their future selves. And there's a number of ways of doing that. One that Hal Hershfield talks about, just as an example, which I quite like, is write a letter to yourself in the future. So pick a time in the future, let's say that 10 years, write a letter to yourself 10 years older than you are now. But most importantly, then wait a week or so and write back from yourself 10 years later to yourself now. That will force you to sit in that chair, stand in those shoes, whatever cliche you want, to think of yourself at that time. Sarah Newcomb, another behavioral finance person, gave a great idea about close your eyes, take some time, and just imagine yourself in that 10 years' time. You wake up in the morning, look around you. What do you see? What's the wallpaper like? Is there anybody next to you? Look out the window. Where are you? And walk through for half an hour your day. This will help you connect better with your future self and therefore be much more motivated to do things now to help that future self because you recognize it more. Fascinating stuff.
It's really interesting, yeah, I must say. Let me try and picture myself in 10 years. Hopefully I'm on the most expensive yacht in the yacht yard.
I'm not getting through to you, Lois, am I?
No, I'm joking, obviously. No, really interesting stuff. You said you wanted to talk about financial goals. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah.
Or goal setting, rather.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of... I've never been a fan of the word goals or the concept of goals. This comes back from when I did my coaching diploma back in 2013. And goal setting and goal based is something you hear a lot from, especially successful people. 10 tips of successful people will always have something about always be aiming for goals. The reason I don't like goals is because once you've achieved a goal, then what happens? Famously, Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, won 8 gold medals at the Sydney Olympics and then had a nervous breakdown. I interviewed a guy called Leon Taylor, who's Olympic medalist at diving, about this recently. And he found that when many gold medalists at the Olympics report great unhappiness when they finally achieve their goal. I've been talking to somebody a little while ago, a business owner who sold his business for something like £15 million and is now bereft because his objective was making £15 million. He never thought what he was going to do with it. So if financial planners are talking to their clients about, let's just say something simple like retirement, what age are you going to retire? 60. Well, there's a question there for a start. Where does the age 60 come from? It's a very round number. How much do you need? 1 million. Really? Never really trust a round figure like that. But the question really should be, great, a day later, what will you be doing? What do you want to be doing? So financial goals can be really, really damaging if there is no thought to what they're leading towards. So going back to the intrinsic and extrinsic thing, what I would much rather talk about intrinsic motivations, things that you do. I mean, a more user-friendly phrase would be meaning and purpose. Where do you find meaning and purpose in your life? If your aim is to achieve a certain goal, what will that give you? And what lies beyond the achievement of that goal? Otherwise, you're just going for the goal for its own sake, and that can make you very unhappy. This person I was talking to a little while ago, they are deeply unhappy, and they've got £12 million in their current account. And yet they're deeply unhappy because they've never thought about what is the point of my life. I asked the question, what's that money for? No idea. Had never thought about what was beyond achieving that goal of an amount of money. So, yeah, financial goals could be the worst possible thing if they have no context.
No, that's really interesting. Well, if I had that, I would just travel the world, but that's another another conversation.
And then that's a really good example, Lois, because that's what, in my experience, 90% of people say. When you answer that question, when you retire, well, then what will you do? Oh, I'll go traveling. Okay. But then you have to ask the question, when you come back from traveling, then what will you do? Because that's just another finite goal.
It depends. If I had endless money, I would just travel for the rest of my life.
Do you think that would get a bit dull after a while?
Not if I went to lots of interesting places, I don't think.
I'll give you an example. I went on a trip recently with a friend to the Black Forest in Germany. And we went there because his great-great-great-grandfather is from a village called Lenzkirch, I think, if I remember rightly. So we went to stay in that village. And we went looking for his grave and looking for the family home. And we had the best 5 days. It was so much fun because there was a point. We had a purpose to it. And I won't go through the whole thing because lots of things happened, but we found his farm up in the hills. And we actually would just imagine Conrad, his great-great-great-grandfather, sitting here with his cows or drinking the beer in the evening. And it was wonderful. It gave the whole thing a point and a purpose. So again, traveling, of course, great, but to what purpose? If you're just endlessly traveling, you'll just be walking in and out of different airports, won't you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll rethink my life goals. No, but it's like that point of, immortality seems like a really good idea until maybe you actually, if you were granted immortality, what would you do for the rest of eternity?
Yeah.
I think life is good when there's a sort of time limit on it.
Yeah, and look, so that there are two aspects to this. There are things that make all of us happy. And there are things that make each of us happy. So if I were to, if you get a hug from a loved one, that will make anybody feel good. If you want to find meaning and purpose in your life, for me, that came from, or it comes from lots of things, but one example is it came from setting up a youth cricket section at my local village youth cricket club, which now has 180 kids going down there every single week. And before I started, there was nothing. That gives me huge pride and will do forever. But for you, it will be something completely different. So there's two elements of it. There's the general truths that's true of everybody, and then there's the know thyself stuff, that's what applies to you. And the advisor and planner's job, I think, is to help their clients understand the know thyself bit by listening and asking simple questions, Bainey.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's interesting. I would never attempt to set up a cricket club because I know nothing about cricket. But yes, I definitely get your point. Maybe a horse riding club or something. Anyway, so I know you've got a new book coming out soon. We obviously, our listeners won't see it, but I can see it behind you there. The 4 Cornerstones of Financial Wellbeing. I've already pre-ordered my copy. I'm very excited to read it. Could you maybe just sort of give us a brief overview of what the 4 cornerstones are?
Yeah, so I've just said 2 of them. So one is the general truths and one is the know thyself. And then, so there's what's true of everybody about what makes us happy, what's true of you about what makes you happy. And then there's the barriers to well-being. So what's true of everybody, the barriers that are true of everybody, and the barriers that are unique to you. So that makes the 4. Example of barriers would be that's true of everybody, behavioral finance stuff. Ever thankful for Neil Beige, who has taught me so much about these areas and was very informative for my book. And that would be things like the present bias that we talked about earlier on, the fact that we all would rather have enjoyment now and not sacrifice for later, but some of us have it worse than others. There's things like confirmation bias, where we seek out information that confirms our existing views. Which I think, given the politics of the last decade, I think probably a lot of people
that's
now
pretty prevalent at the moment.
I think we're all quite familiar with that concept now. My personal favourite actually is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Do you know about the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, I don't think so.
The Dunning-Kruger effect is all about how we learn. And the best way of summing it up that I like is you have to be reasonably intelligent to understand how stupid you are.
Yeah, it's a good point.
So what happens as we learn is we learn a little bit and go, yeah, brilliant, got it, thanks very much. And you go, whoa, there's more. And no, that's all right, I understand, it's no problem. Well, if you just learn a little bit more, you suddenly go, oh, actually, there's a lot more to this than I realize. So, but what most people do, and me, you, everybody, is we stop way too early. Now, the reason that that's a particular favorite is because I see that applying in lots of different walks of my life. So some of the work that I do with succession planning with companies, for example, they say, thanks very much. I've read your book on employee ownership. Got it now. No, that was an introduction. That's not it. And I get that a lot, but also with financial well-being, somebody will say the same thing. Or thanks very much. I hadn't thought about listening and questioning skills and the use of silence. I'll go off and do that. No, you need to get training and practice in it. It's really not easy to do, allowing somebody else to talk. So yeah, I see the Dunning-Kruger effect a lot. And what I would urge people to do is keep learning, always keep learning. I've been writing and reading about this stuff now for 8 years. And only a year ago did the penny drop on the future self stuff, there is, and get it from all walks of life as well. I've been doing a lot of reading and doing some training in Buddhism, for example. It all overlaps and it all interacts. There's so much of it. So yeah, the Dunning-Kruger. Anyway, waffling. Finally, are the barriers that are unique to each of us, which is our self-limiting beliefs. So people will be familiar with a client who says the stock market's not for me, or I'm just not very good with money. These aren't true. They are beliefs that we hold, and our beliefs sometimes can lead to poor decisions. And this is especially true when it comes to financial planning, because as I said at the beginning, we've only had to do financial planning for the last 30 or 40 years in the entire history of humanity. We're not built for it. So consequently, a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our behaviors, they're great when we're out in the woods trying to hunt saber-toothed tigers. But that's not the case anymore. Financial planning doesn't come naturally. So it's all about the 4 areas that help us to make better financial decisions.
Perfect. Really interesting. It's like a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. If you tell yourself you're bad with money, you're going to start being bad with money, probably.
Very true. Yeah. And in fact, undoing self-limiting beliefs. Obviously, self-limiting beliefs aren't just about money. One of my favorite lines, which came from the first Financial Wellbeing book, which I think I probably have to credit Jan Bowen-Nielsen, Equivalent Management, for, but is beliefs are not truths. Just because you believe something to be the case doesn't mean that it is. And I think once you can really properly accept that concept, then you can start.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. I'm interested to know, what are some of the biggest changes you've witnessed in the financial advice profession since you started?
What I find fascinating is that there's 2 parts to the answer to this. One is, there's 2 questions, really. One is the biggest changes, and the other one is why they haven't been universal. Mm-hmm. Because the biggest changes, back in 1998, I started charging time, and I was literally laughed at by a business partner at that time. So the move to being fee-based, I'd like to see a move to time, actually logging time, but shouting in the void at that one. Nobody ever wants to listen to me on that point. Maybe we'll do another podcast on that one. But the move to then planning, to then happiness theory, this is massive from when I started, when it was literally all about how many distribution bonds from Sun Life could you sell at the same time. Huge change. I still come across people who are like that, though. Mm-hmm. And I find it that's a massive change from advice to planning to well-being is a huge and fascinating, really interesting journey. How could you not have gone on that journey? How could you not have taken those steps? It's so much more fun and so much better for your business. So, yeah, there's 2 parts to that. The whole growth of planning and well-being is, you see it, the younger advisors in particular, they get it far, far more because they understand that life isn't about accumulating money. Whereas I guess advisors of my age, a lot of us were in the Thatcher era where loads of money was a thing, and ostentatious wealth, greed is good, all that kind of stuff, lunches for wimps. Whereas your generation, that's not how you think. So there's a shift coming through over the next 10 to 15 years, and older advisors who are going to be retiring in that time probably don't need to worry about it. But anybody, 45 or younger, I think, got to be on that journey to be part of how the profession is changing in a really positive way.
Yeah, definitely. The world might end tomorrow and then your money's worth nothing. So there's a cheerful thought.
Yes. Well, the thing is, your generation, Lois, and my kids' generation, it might only be 0.01%, but there is actually a possibility that there won't be any human life on the planet by the time you retire. That's a conversation that is being had, no matter how likely or unlikely, it is still a conversation. So when I say to you, put all your money away for when you're 65 and you retire, why would you bother? You need to have a different conversation now, which might end up with doing that, actually. But it's coming to it from a completely different approach.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a balance, I think, between, living in the present and making sure your future self is all right. I was having a conversation, I think it was with my mum, although she said she didn't say it, but she was talking about, it's not a bad thing. I mean, she was saying it's important to have a balance. My parents have always been very sensible saving, but having like fun in the present as well. So I did have quite a good sort of upbringing like that. So I probably overspend in the present, but yeah, that's probably another conversation that we won't get into now.
Well, one thing I would suggest, obviously I would suggest that you do, but I would also suggest every single listener does. One of the things I do when I do talks at conferences, and I love doing talks at conferences, is I ask for a show of hands of how many people in the audience have their own financial planner.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing. It's usually 3 or 4 out of 100 tops.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yet I also come across business owners like the one I was talking about who have just trying to build up their business to sell for a certain amount of money without any thought of how much money they actually need. Not want, need to do the things in life that they want. That is the process. What do you need? What makes you, start that again. Number 1, what makes you happy? Number 2, therefore, how much do you need to make you happy? Therefore, how much does your business need to be worth? That's the logical process. Vast majority of people don't do that. And even the advisors who are experts in this don't go through that process. So my one tip to everybody here is get a financial advisor, preferably one who has been through the Financial Wellbeing certificate as run by the IFW, because then they will focus your plan about your well-being.
Perfect. Well, I think that's probably all we've got time for this podcast, but it's been really, really great to talk to you, Chris. Thank you so much. Really interesting stuff there, I think.
And Lois, thank you for your support with it all. I really appreciate it, because it is not always easy getting people to think differently. And the whole point of the IFW is to make the world a happier place. Right? And we make the world a happier place by getting people to focus on what makes them happy, not on money. So your support and helping us do that is massively appreciated.
No problem. A great note to end on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to In Conversation With. We do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do keep up to date with all our new releases via Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts from. You can also keep up to date with all our new content published on the Money Marketing website, as well as our print edition Money Marketing magazine. So make sure to subscribe. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. See you next time.